Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. As we inch closer to the conventions this month, I'd like to take a look at a uniting factor between Democrats and Republicans. That singular aspect that shortens the chasm across the aisle. The things that make these two, in the end, just one party. One two-headed monstrosity sitting atop a pile of corpses, corruption, and corroded conviction. Money. And at this point, it's pretty much common knowledge that both parties have huge corporate donors. Some progressives try to slough off the guilt of being bought by pointing fingers at the Koch brothers, while conveniently ignoring the likes of George Soros, for example. Others will say, well, yeah, the Democrats do get money from millionaires and billionaires, but, that's how the system is built. We have to. And besides, the Democrats get money from the nice billionaires. Oh, I wish that were true, my bonny blue friends. But sadly, past that bright blue veneer is some murky fucking water filled with corporate cash that comes from the very same coffers that help fund the Republican races. Let me show you what I mean. And largely, it is true that individuals, for the most part, do tend to give money to either one party or the other, as evidenced by this chart put together by the Center for Responsive Politics. However, when we look at companies and organizations, the demarcation of conservative versus so-called liberals blurs significantly. Not a lot of zeros popping up like there were in that individual chart. In fact, if you look at some of the companies, it's almost an outright tie, like AT&T, for example, or Goldman Sachs, or Citigroup. Another graph, also by the Center for Responsive Politics, shows this double dipping in an even more obvious way. Microsoft, GE, Lockheed Martin, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, Time Warner, Comcast, Boeing, Pfizer, on and on and on and on. Oh, and spoiler alert, all of these companies are assholes. The "we don't take money from horrible people" argument clearly doesn't hold water here. The companies listed here are like a who's who of who's fucking us over. Whether that be perpetual war, the surveillance state, the sick care system, income inequality, or just the plain and simple overarching oligarchical plutocratic bullshit that hangs over everything. These corporations are steering our country into disaster after disaster like a homicidal masochist driving an MRAP. They don't care what side of the aisle politicians are sitting on. To them, Congress is just a giant pit of opportunity where everyone can be bought. And actually, for the most part, that's true. In almost 100% of congressional races, the winner outspent their opponent, which in turn explains why 96% of Congress won re-election despite having an approval rating of 11 goddamn percent. And that might sound shocking, but I'm actually most shocked by that 11%. Who the hell are these people? It's like the 7 in 10 women who have an unfavorable view of Trump. Well, yeah, no shit. But who the actual fuck are the other 3 in 10 women? Were you just going around to padded rooms, or did you ask a few women in the Amazonian tribes, as yet untouched by civilization, what they thought of some guy named Trump? Those mind-boggling minority margins aside, the bottom line is that there is but one bottom line. It's red, it's blue, and it's actually really quite white. The Democrat versus Republican partition is essentially this picture. We're on the bench thinking, oh, what a beautiful day. Sun is shining. I'm with my party, my one and only, who'd never betray me, never sell me out, never go against what's best for me. And then one day, you find out that they're fracking half the country, laying pipeline coast to coast, spying on you even though they said they wouldn't, and killing random people that they said were stalking you, but who totally weren't. They chose this guy to be the DNC host committee chair, the guy who felt confident that Trump would lose because all the quote-unquote ugly women wouldn't vote for him. And he's pretty sure that the U.S. has more ugly women than attractive ones. Yeah, he said that. But hey, what's a little misogyny between loved ones, right? Rendell is an upstanding Democratic superdelegate. He's a paid consultant for fracking industry equity firm Element Partners. He's the co-chair of the group Fix the Debt, which advocates for slashing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in order to balance the budget. And in 2011, he gave paid speeches on behalf of MEK, an Iranian exile group that was at the time listed as a terrorist organization. But hey, at least he's a Democrat. Or how about the host committee's finance chair, Daniel Hilferty? Danny Boy is the CEO of Independence Blue Cross and the chairman of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association of America, essentially the lobbying wing of Blue Cross. Oh, and he's on the board of directors for America's Health Insurance Plan, who lobbied hard against the Affordable Care Act and is currently bankrolling several Republican bills to slice and dice the ACA. Hilferty has also personally donated quite a bit of money to the quote-unquote other side. As reported in The Intercept, Hilferty gave $10,000 to Prosperity for Pennsylvania, a super PAC supporting the re-election of Senator Pat Toomey, Republican, $1,000 to the PAC supporting Senator Orrin Hatch, also Republican, $1,000 to Senator Tim Scott, Republican, $2,700 to Chris Christie's presidential campaign, $25,000 to the NRCC, a GOP committee designed to re-elect House Republicans, $2,700 to Jeb Bush. Oh, and Hilferty also gave $27,000 to Hillary Clinton's campaign. Minor note. And before you gasp at the thought of a Republican darling throwing wads of cash in Clinton's direction, also consider this. Corey Shockey, a Republican who worked for the National Security Council and the State Department under President George W. Bush, has thrown her weight behind Clinton. And as reported by Politico last week, Brent Scowcroft, who served as National Security Advisor under President George H.W. Bush, announced last Wednesday that he is also backing Clinton, while fellow foreign policy realist Richard Armitage, George W. Bush's Deputy Secretary of State, told Politico earlier this month that he too would vote for the former Secretary of State over Trump. And yeah, you can definitely chalk a lot of this up to the fact that many Republicans find Trump absolutely disgusting, which so does everyone else, but for different reasons. As Andrew Weinstein, Deputy Press Secretary for Newt Gingrich, wrote in the Wall Street Journal, look at the policy records of Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Trump, and you'd be hard-pressed to tell who's the Republican. Weinstein finds Trump too liberal on several issues and calls him out for having a quote-unquote conservatism of convenience stance in order to appeal to right-wing voters, which, interestingly enough, is exactly the same point put forward on the flip side with regards to Hillary Clinton. And Clinton has actually gotten a lot of shit for being more flip-floppy than a pair of Birkenstocks, or in fact, not just flip-floppy, but simply Republican. Blogger Russ Belville had this to say about Hillary in a Huffington Post op-ed earlier this year. If Donald Trump wins the presidency over Hillary Clinton, it's not the fault of people like me who won't vote for Republicans. It's the fault of the Democratic Party for nominating a Republican. For me, the horror of a 4-year Trump term is less frightening than cementing in the far-right, center-right corporate duopoly in American politics created since Hillary's husband sold out Democratic principles on welfare, crime, race, labor, trade, drugs, and media. Belville goes on to offer up 25 reasons as to why he wouldn't vote for a Republican, citing 25 things that Hillary Clinton also supports, like wars in the Middle East, fracking, Wall Street deregulation, a tawdry minimum wage hike, ramping up the surveillance state, racism, anti-immigration policies, the war on drugs, and so on and so forth. And even just outside the presidential race, several of these stances were echoed in the recent Democratic Party platform vote in St. Louis. About a week and a half ago, the DNC Platform Drafting Committee voted down proposals to oppose the TPP, ban fracking, call out the Israeli occupation of Palestine, push single-payer health care, raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and support a carbon tax. Furthermore, in the climate arena, Bill McKibben, founder of 350.org and one of Bernie's delegates, reported that Besides voting down a ban on fracking and a carbon tax, the committee also voted down, quote, an effort to keep fossil fuels in the ground, at least on federal land, a measure to mandate that federal agencies weigh the climate impact of their decisions, even a plan to keep fossil fuel companies from taking private land by eminent domain. And can I just point out that these proposals are pretty toothless to begin with? I mean, what the hell does an effort to keep fossil fuels in the ground actually mean? Like, you send a guy out there to try and convince the oil company to not drill a chain link fence? Or weigh the climate impact? What the fuck is that vague shit? Well, we did weigh the climate impact and found that, we don't give a shit. But yeah, we actually thought about it really hard. But before I cast too many aspersions, let me just also point out that the committee did agree on a resolution for more bike paths. Now that is what I call some sensible fucking policy. Ultimately, despite the smooth move on the bike paths, the decisions that came out of this committee only further support the monetary and policy evidence that yes, Democrats and Republicans are the same animal, fueled by shifty funds that in turn fuel the policies that benefit the few and fuck over the rest. Which, yes, that does sound pretty damn bleak, but only if you feel that there are no alternatives to the status quo. And to believe that is to just give up. As I said in today's spoken word, dive in to the tangled web, tango on and create your own steps. Don't let the political past chain you to a shitty future. Yes, the Democrats take money because the system is that way, but why the fuck does it have to be that way? Why just accept that the party supposedly charged with representing our interests gets its capital from the same machine that works against our interests at every turn? Why just blindly accept the lesser of two evils as if that weren't also evil? The longer we cower in the face of evil, the longer evil will be our master. The longer we accept the system because that's just the way it is, the worse it will continue to get. Don't drown in this avalanche of lip service lies and lesser evils. The only thing standing in the way of progress is the very same thing that stands in the way of utter disaster. Us. If we stand up, they will fall. If we sit down, we will get trampled by the well-oiled machine that is our capitalist, oligarchical, plutocratic, kleptocratic, trigger-happy, greedy system. As Pericles said, just because you don't take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you.